This is your Wednesday Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. Blake Baratz will join me here in just a little bit. He's an agent based locally here in Minneapolis, represents a lot of different NFL players, a lot of Vikings, including Adam Thielen. And he also represents Rashod Bateman, who is expected to be drafted pretty high in this weekend's draft, maybe as high as the first round on Thursday. Certainly by Friday when the second and third round happens. So Blake will kind of get us through the process of what Rashod can expect that night, what an agent really does, and some other interesting discussion points we got into. So really enjoyed that conversation, and I hope you do too. But first, what did I miss? Everybody help me understand what is going on here. Rocco Baldelli, before Tuesday's game, said Alexander Colome is going to get used in different situations. Going to get maybe work a little earlier in the game, in some lower leverage situations after the really tough start to the season. It's an understatement. I think Aaron Gleeman tweeted that he's had the worst win probability added of any new pitcher on any team in the history of baseball. Relief pitcher, I think his win probability added is over -2 now, which is just unbelievable. So pitching terribly, right? Gives up the game-winning home run Monday. Rocco says, Tuesday they're gonna, we still have confidence in him. We got to work on some stuff. I get it. That's fine. You're invested in him. Okay, he's got a track record. Let's try to figure this out. So what happens Tuesday night? Hours after Rocco Baldelli says that, they bring Colome into a 5-4 game. Twins are down 1 run. They've just pulled within 1. A 5-4 game in the 8th inning against Cleveland, one of your biggest division rivals. Now, technically, this is a lower leverage situation, right? Leverage is, kind of one of those things that's got a specific definition, so it's a mathematical definition. It was developed, maybe 15 years ago. Baseball Prospectus defines it as the change in probability of winning the game from scoring or allowing one additional run in the current game situation divided by the change in probability from scoring or allowing one run at the start of the game. Got that? So, basically when you're down a run with only 1 inning left, the chance that you're going to win probably is not great to begin with, right? You're going to have to score at least 1 run, which is a lower probability event, especially if you have the Twins lineup. That I don't think that matters, but okay. So if you're down 1 run, it's a lower leverage situation than, start of the game when it's 0-0. A higher leverage would be Colome's coming in to protect a 1-run lead, or Colome's coming into a tie game. So yes, technically, here is what I don't get. This is not the situation I imagined in my mind that he would come into to work out the kinks. I'm thinking in my head, it's going to be like a 7-2 game in 2 or 3 days. The Twins are either going to be up or behind, and they're going to try to get him an inning of work and work on some stuff, try to get his confidence back. It was certainly not the very next night in a 1-run game. And what happens? He's wild. He's ineffective. They end up giving up 2 runs in that inning. One of them he forces in with a walk. The other one comes in when Jorge Alcala comes in and hits a batter. So next thing you know, it's 7-4. That's your final. Any chance they had of winning that game realistically went down the drain that inning. And any chance of turning this skid around, which is now 7-15. Everybody, 7-15, which has included 13 losses in their last 15 games. Any of that went down the drain, really with his performance, but almost with the minute Colome came into this game. So I don't know what to say. It doesn't make any sense. It's a baffling situation. If it's a question of poor roster construction and Rocco Baldelli doesn't think he has any other good viable options once he's used a few other guys in the bullpen and Kenta Maeda has not given him a great start again, well, then that's a failure of roster construction. And the problem with that is it's still April. What are you going to do about that? Nobody's going to trade relief pitching in April, not anybody meaningful anyway, so you're either going to be looking at the bargain bin, trying to pull up someone from the minors, or hoping that the team you left, Florida with 3-4 weeks ago will turn this around. I don't like any of those options right now, and I didn't like the option last night to use Colome in the 8th inning.
Enjoy your money your way when you switch to Royal Credit Union. You can pay friends and family for free, deposit checks on the go, and even get alerts about your account sent in real time. Stop in and open your account today, or get started at rcu.org/yourway. Insured by NCUA.
The Timberwolves won again, you guys. 3 wins in a row. The first 2 over Utah, this one in Houston, a team that is full-on tank mode, but the Wolves win 114-107. Here's 2 reasons why that's important. One is their third win in a row. They hadn't done that all year. So there's that. That means they're now 19-44 on the season, which means they are 12-15 since the All-Star breaking. And 12-15, nothing to brag about, but that is certainly better than the pace they were on at the start of the year when they were 7-29. Improvement for sure. I don't think there's any doubt about that. 9-6 with Towns and with Carl-Anthony Towns and D'Angelo Russell both playing this season. So some signs of improvement there that are hard to miss when you look at them on the court and when you see the results. But bigger picture than that, they've moved into the third worst record now in the NBA. They passed Houston a while ago. Now they got 4 more wins than Houston. I think it's safe to say they're going to finish ahead of Houston. Now Orlando, they're ahead of Orlando too, and they're closing pretty quickly on Detroit. Oklahoma City also won last night. Shocker, they beat Boston. Did not see that one coming. But so let's, in terms of the lottery odds now, what this means is, let's say the Wolves finish with the third, fourth, even fifth worst record in the NBA. They're treading into the territory now where they could decrease their odds of keeping their pick by a little bit. Remember, they've got that trade with Golden State where they give up the pick if it's not in the top 3. But still in this number 3 spot they're in right now, the odds of them keeping the pick are the same as they were before when they were worst or second worst. It's still 40.1%. What you're doing now, though, is you're decreasing the odds that the pick is going to be really good if it goes to Golden State. The more likely pick now, if it goes to Golden State, is the 6th pick. Let's say they move into the 4th spot in the lottery order. Then it becomes the most likely pick is like 6th or 7th. So that doesn't matter a ton if you are a Wolves fan, but I do feel like part of what's driving this angst with Wolves fans is that this pick they're going to give up is really, really good. Like when they were the worst team in the league, it was going to be the 4th or 5th pick that they had to give up. One of those two. Is you're talking about a top 5 pick. If it ends up being like the 7th pick, even if they don't keep it, I feel like the sting of that and the perception of that, like you're going to have to give this pick up one way or the other, whether it's this year or next year. The sting of it being the 7th pick this year instead of 4th or 5th feels like there's a perception difference with that potentially. And the other important thing, the Timberwolves no longer have the worst record in North American professional sports history. Winning percentage now 393-46. They passed the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are 393-21. This could be jockeying back and forth. This could be their record again once Tampa Bay plays again this season and goes 11-6 or whatever they're going to go. But for right now, the Wolves are no longer the worst. We made a big deal about it when they became the worst earlier this season, so we need to make a big deal about it now when they have passed Tampa Bay, at least temporarily.
I'm Nyla Jean Myers, Senior Assistant Sports Editor at the Star Tribune. Thank you for listening to Strip Sports Daily Delivery. This work is made possible by our Star Tribune subscribers. For unlimited access to the articles mentioned in this podcast and our coverage of Minnesota sports from pros to preps, go to startribune.com/subscribe.
Happy to be joined today by Blake Baratz, Institute for Athletes founder. Agent, I guess, is the simpler title, but I like founder of Institute for Athletes better. It's local. He represents a lot of good guys locally, including Adam Thielen from the Vikings, and I believe you got Rashod Bateman now, right?
Yep, we got a bunch of Vikings, and Rashod's one of our rookies.
See if he winds up in green and gold. Some rumors to that effect. I don't know if that would how that would play here, but haven't had to deal with that too much. So we'll see. That'd make Rashod happy because that probably would be the first round. But anyway, I've got Blake on because I feel like draft week. There's a lot going on, and I think people don't necessarily understand exactly the role of an agent all the time, or kind of, what goes into this whole process of the lead up to the draft and, the week of the draft, things like that. So, from an overview standpoint, like how have you been able to, how do you like get guys ready for this process? Like what's the process from, in a normal year and even this year, like to, from January, February on, like what's the process that you are doing to help these guys kind of get to the finish line and get drafted and get onto these teams?
It's a long, arduous process. I think, to the naked eye, everyone focuses on the draft because that's what everyone talks about. And that's the drama reality show that everyone lives in. But for us, we're really, especially for a rookie, with the day a rookie signs, whether that's December, January, it's a very individualized program to help them in a lot of different facets of their life. So The combine and the physical workouts are one portion of it. The marketing endorsements are another portion of it. How they want their brand to look is a different portion of it. Making sure they understand finance is a different portion of it. What they're going to do in the offseason program is a different portion of it. Getting the information from all 32 teams and really understanding what they want to see and then putting a plan in place to improve upon those areas is a portion of it. And, we're trying to prepare him to get drafted as high as possible, but we're also, trying to put a cohesive plan in place that allows him to become the best NFL player possible and the best teammate possible and the best at whatever he's doing possible. So the draft is obviously the most talked about aspect, but a lot of our work isn't necessarily done on Thursday or Friday. And a lot of it wasn't even scheduled to be done Thursday or Friday. This is stuff that may take place, whether he does a football camp with Tyler Johnson this summer or all sorts of things that no one really sees that we're working on, which frankly takes, the majority of the time. Because once we get him into the proper nutritional program, strength and conditioning program, with the right receivers, coaches, other pros that can teach him the nuances of the game, then it's getting him into that program. And his responsibilities are, get there on time, work as hard as you can. If something comes up, communicate. But it's all the moving pieces simultaneously. And then when you throw in COVID, you're doing everything virtually. There is no Senior Bowl for the seniors. This year there was, but there weren't other All-Star games. There was no combine. There were no visits. All the rules changed. So now, whereas if a guy went to the combine, a lot of the stuff that would be done there would occupy 32 teams' wishes. Now you're doing stuff via Zoom and you're scheduling additional medical appointments and physicals and flights. And logistically, it was tougher this year. But, for us, it's such a – I don't know if it's just us or other agencies, but for us, it's a very comprehensive approach and a holistic approach that, we're not solely focused on a 40-yard dash or solely focused on the draft, because at the end of the day, this may sound stupid, but I can kind of take the emotion out of it and see the forest through the trees, so to speak. The draft doesn't really matter that much in the grand scheme of things. I can tell you how the draft went if you ask me in 4 or 5 years. Did the guys continue to perform? Did they go to good situations? Did they excel? I can't, a lot of people think an agent's job is to sell. I can't control how many receivers are in this draft. I can't control team needs. I can't control where those team needs and those guys draft. And a lot of those things are going to affect where guys get drafted, not necessarily how good of a football player they are today or they project into the future. And it's easier for me to understand that, having been through this a million times, than it is for a 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old to understand, because that's all that's getting talked about.
That said, I want to get into some big picture stuff and kind of how you got into this business. But first, because you do have, Rashod Bateman this year, someone of, immense local interest. I mean, all of what you said, aside, this is draft week. What will Thursday, potentially Friday, and even into the weekend of, kind of these first few days after you get drafted, what will that be like for him? What is that scene like? Is he ready for that? How does that play out?
I mean, will he be ready? Who knows? I've done my, I've had my heart to hearts, and I've just said, listen, you've worked as hard as you possibly can. And regardless of what I tell you, Thursday is going to be an extremely long day. So just know that, everyone that you're inviting over to your house or wherever you're going to be, everyone is going to be there for you, and everyone's going to be looking at you. And, whether you want to show up after the first 10 picks, whether you want to show up after you've been drafted, or you want to show up the entire day, just know it's going to be a really, really long day. You could be drafted 20th in the NFL draft and you could be sitting there for 5 hours already. So it's easier for me to say that because I've been through it so many times. I'm just, telling him, one, wherever you get drafted Thursday or Friday, it's one hell of an accomplishment in your life. And under no circumstance should it turn into any sort of disappointment. You've reached, one of your major goals. It's going to be rewarding on a lot of levels. And whether you deserve to be 20th and you went 28th, or you went, 45th and deserve to go 25th, it's still one hell of an accomplishment, and nothing should detract from that. So as much, again, it's easier for me to say than it is for him to do. But I'm just trying to educate him and his family and the people around him, because it's a long day anyway, slice. And if you don't go Thursday, you're sitting there for 24 hours till Friday night. And it's a really, really long day again. Even if you're the first guy off the board on Friday, it's still a really long day. And that's just the nerves and the excitement and the anxiety. It's just a lot for any person to handle. And when you're drafted, like, it's going to be a huge weight off your shoulders. And then you're actually going to be able to relax and enjoy the moment and share it with your friends and family. And that moment always comes. It's just the moments leading up to that are really hard to deal with because you just don't know. Like, outside of maybe Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson, no one really knows where they're going to go. And it's going to be a long day for the third pick and the fourth pick and the fifth pick. And those guys are coming off the board really early. So I'm just trying to get all of them to keep it in perspective. Like, no one cares today that Michael Thomas went second round, or that DK Metcalf went second round, or that Laquan Treadwell went first round. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, it matters in that moment, but you're doing this to set yourself up for financial security and be happy in your life and achieve a dream. And, it didn't matter whether Adam Thielen went undrafted or Laquan Treadwell went first round. Like, it's a starting point. And you want to continue to get better so that you have the opportunity to stay in the NFL for 4 years and 8 years and 12 years. Because if you do that, then you're going to have the opportunity to set your family up and your kids' kids and your kids' kids' kids to have financial prosperity forever, which allows you the freedom to do what you want to do. And wherever you get drafted is not going to define what happens the rest of your life. So, again, a lot easier for me to say than for everyone. I can assure you I'll show up Thursday and no one will be calm and everyone will be tense and they'll be sitting on their phones. But it won't change the messaging. And I hate the draft every year for those reasons because it's hard to manage expectations and it's hard. I'm not the one actually going through it. So, I do the best that I can with my different experiences. And to me, the draft is like, it's really just a starting point. It doesn't define anything. And of course, everyone wants to hear their name called as high as possible because there's financial incentive and there's pride involved. But these teams have egos too, and these teams make mistakes too. And it's an inexact science. And there's a lot of over-analysis. And, my job through the weekend is to tie up any loose ends and communicate appropriately. And I firmly do believe he's one of the best, if not the best receiver in the class. I'm biased, but I can't make decisions for 32 teams. So it really doesn't matter what I think or what Rashod thinks or what his mom thinks or what Coach Fleck thinks, because none of us have the ability to draft him anyway. So,
right. You brought up Adam Thielen a minute ago. That was, he became one of your, biggest, earliest, biggest clients, just because of his ascendance and you going from undrafted to, now being one of the best receivers in the NFL. Just curious, as you started IFA and we're growing that, like, how do you even get into this industry? How do you decide this is what you want to do and that you want to, this is, the path you want to take?
You know what? I kind of stumbled into it a little bit. I went to the University of Wisconsin in Madison. I was on a tennis scholarship there. And when you're playing a sport, at least 20 years ago, we all kind of shared the same facilities. You're in there working out with the guys and you're sharing, cafeterias with the guys. And I ended up becoming good friends with guys at all the sports, but I was really close with some of the guys on the football team and stayed in touch with them over the years. And I had an opportunity in my early 20s to go work at at the time, it was a startup agency. And I didn't really know what an agent did. So I called a lot of those guys and said, what does your agent do? And do you like them? Do you not like them? What are the expectations? And these guys were good guys like Chris Chambers and Lee Evans and Brooks Bollinger and guys that were in the league, first round picks, second round picks, fifth round picks, intelligent guys, low maintenance guys. And the common sentiment just kind of kept coming back to me like, I don't really know what they do. They don't help me with that much. Like, I talk to them a couple of times a year. I write them a big check. And kind of a light went off in my head at that time that they're just like, there was something missing, that I felt that there was a better way to operate this business. And I felt that their platform was much bigger and wasn't getting utilized properly. And these guys were with, quote unquote, the biggest and best agents in the business. So, at that time, I felt like there was an opportunity to come in and do things better. I didn't have any basis to think that other than what I saw and heard, but I knew that I had to go in and learn the business. So I spent a lot of time just, when I decided to take the leap of faith, I was 23 years old or 24 years old and took a job, worked 1,000,000 hours, made no money. And I just was a sponge. That's all I did was work for 2 or 3 years and like learn the salary cap and the CBA and asked as many questions as possible, probably to the point of annoying everyone I worked with, just to figure out what I was missing. Because I knew if I learned the business, the honesty, working hard, transparency, relatability, communication, like those things kind of came natural to me anyway. So I felt like if I could add a value proposition to their lives, then there was something there. So I did that for a while, and then I had an opportunity to go work at a big shop in Los Angeles. And I went there, and that's really where I got my feet wet. We had first round picks every year. We had Hall of Famers. I was able to continue to be a sponge and be involved in conversations and go to the combine. And, I wasn't afraid of introducing myself to anyone and trading business cards and just learned. And then I learned a lot of good things and I learned a lot of bad things, about the business and what I wanted to do and what I didn't want to do. And my thesis at the time was just like, I wanted to work with good guys that got it, guys that were mature, guys that respected us, guys that viewed this more as like a partnership than I work for you or you work for me. And that wasn't always the case with the people I worked with. It was, it didn't really matter if they were high character, low character, great work ethic, bad work ethic. If they felt that there was going to be a return on investment, then that was their bottom line in vetting process, where mine was a little different. But again, I didn't really have any proof because I hadn't been in the business very long. And as I continued to kind of prove that my thought process was correct, then that gave me the confidence that I could go out and do it on my own. And so after the 2009 draft, I jumped out and left the firm I was with and started IFA, and I moved back here. And anyone that I knew in the business that I had some level of relationship for, respect for, I bounced ideas off of, whether it was Jeff Diamond, who used to run the Vikings, or
right.
the Titans, or any of the players I used to know. And I don't know, I was 28, so I don't know if I was ignorant, naive, dumb, aggressive, probably all of them. And I just felt like, I don't know, worst comes to worst, I'll go do something else, or worst comes to worst, I'll figure it out. And it's still difficult, but I feel like we've kind of proven it over and over again. And now we get a lot of referrals, and we have a great staff, and I know we're making a difference, and we're probably doing way too much for these guys, but that's what we signed up for. It's been fun. Every day's a little different.
Interesting. I enjoyed that answer. Last thing for you, Blake, just thinking about 2021, we've seen a lot of, I don't even know where to begin with the last year, but, a lot of athletes using their platforms for social justice change, racial equality. We've seen players be more, vocal and getting together and saying, we don't want to, these off-season programs, for safety reasons, for whether it's COVID, whether it's protecting their bodies, and, 17 games now. Do you sense that players are different now than they were 15 years ago? Is there a shift in the power dynamic, I guess, in what players want and what they're able to achieve in that regard?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely see a difference in players. I see a lot of difference, some positive, some negative. I think that players today, probably with social media, they have access to more information. They have access to more people. They communicate, like the top 100 players in the country are communicating on a group chat, and they're texting each other. Like, they're communicating, they're talking to one another, they're empowering one another. I think it also helps. You have guys like LeBron James out there that's leading the charge, and Chris Paul, and like they have someone that they can look to that's really doing that. I also think, like, historically, especially in football and probably basketball to some extent too, like, it's always been kind of a good old boys club, and it's been a dictatorship, and you're in my program, you do what I say, and they've really never had to change that. And I think, of recent, whether that's 3 years, 5 years, 2 years, whatever it is, I think they've all had to take a step back to say, you know what, this is different. I got to communicate with my team differently. And I actually have to care what they think. And I got to care how they feel. Does it go overboard sometimes? Sure. But I've always, from my standpoint, I've always felt like a lot of these college programs teach these, treat these guys like they're teenagers, like they're kids, like I treat my 5-year-old. And I think they deserve more, even at the NFL level. Just because they work for you doesn't mean you need to treat them like children. And I think if there was better communication and they sat down with these people, instead of looking at them as what can they do for them, and looked at them as a true partner or employee like they should, instead of a $1,500 a month scholarship check that can go perform on Saturdays, then there wouldn't have to be such a drastic change. I think it would become more natural. So I do think there's a big change. I also think that guys are walking in with a little more, they've maybe been put on the pedestal a little too early, too long, whether it's AAU ball or 7-on-7 or these college announcements. I just think like they're coming in like they know everything and they've seen everything, which also gives a false sense of information. So I think there's good and bad. I think information, generally speaking, is better. But I think putting some of these 14, 15, 16, 17-year-olds on a pedestal like they can't do any wrong, and then they get to college and they have a little adversity because they can't get on the court or they can't get on the field or they don't like the playing time or they don't like what the coach says. I think there's a little softness to them too, that I think there's probably a happy medium in there that the good communicators and the good coaches will get out.
And then you have to deal with them too.
Correct.
So is there?
I'm too much of a straight shooter though, so I don't mesh well.
No.
With the guy that needs to be coddled because I'll get fired in 2 seconds.
Is there going to be much of an off-season program this year? I've seen a lot of teams, including the Vikings players, are saying, this is how we want to do it. We kind of liked it last year when there wasn't much going on.
Well, it's a tricky question because the off-season program really was the same as it always has been. It's always been voluntary. Now,
yeah, wink, 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 right? I mean,
right. Well, there's still no agreement in place between the owners and the Players Association. So as of today, every team is still going forward with it, with how they deem they should go forward with it. There's phase 1, which is really just workouts. You're going in to work out with the strength coach for an hour a day, and you're doing your meetings virtually. And that goes till like May, early May. And then starting May 16th, May 17th, somewhere in there, you go to phase 2, which you're actually allowed to get on the field a little bit and install and get with the coaches, which, there is some value to that depending on the situation. Like, does Eric Kendricks or Adam Thielen or, Danielle Hunter really need to show up May 17th for on the field work if they weren't getting paid in workout bonuses? Probably not. These guys are veterans. They're going to be taking care of their bodies. They're in shape. They may already know the offense or defense. But for rookies or second-year guys or guys that finish the year on the practice squad, I think it is important that they get on the field. Some coaches may hold it against players for not showing up. Other coaches may not. But, I've told all of our guys, you got to do what's in your best interest because there's 90 guys on the roster right now and they're going to keep 53 come September. And you don't have the luxury at this stage of your career to look out for 2,000 other players. That's just not your job. So do I think some of it is antiquated and not necessary? Yes. But you already knew this was going to be the case and in place last March when you guys agreed to a CBA. So do I also think players that have families elsewhere need to fly in to stay in a hotel to work out for an hour with the strength coach? No, I think that's ridiculous too. So I think the Vikings came up with something reasonable to say, hey guys, we're not going to dock you for not showing up the first month. As long as you participate in the meetings virtually, we do want you here for phase 2, even though it's still optional. I think that was smart. And I think that was kind of the happy medium. Why it had to come down to the day they were actually supposed to report, I'm not sure, but we had a year to figure this out. But again, I'm not the one making the decisions.
Sometimes you just need a deadline, Blake. Sometimes you just need a deadline.
Correct.
Well, the deadline for the draft is here Thursday night. Hope you have an enjoyable as possible weekend. I really enjoyed chatting with you here on Daily Delivery, and let's keep in touch down the road. All right.
Thanks, Mike. Anytime. Thanks for having me.
Take care. Let's end things really quickly today with the cooler. Ben Gessling, really smart stuff in today's Star Tribune, startribune.com. Vikings full 7-round mock draft, including needs and everything like that, really detailed, through some trades in there. And luck would have it, Ben Gessling will be on Thursday's show to help you get ready for the draft, which starts Thursday night. So look forward to that. Thanks for joining me here today on Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand, and we will see you again on Thursday.